Today we'll be working with dividing real numbers. Our one vocabulary word for this section is multiplicative inverse, and it is the reciprocal of a non-zero number a. Written as 1 over a. And we will look at more examples of multiplicative inverses or reciprocals in a moment. We have one new property for today's lesson, and that is the inverse property of multiplication. The product of a non-zero number and its multiplicative inverse is 1. So when you multiply a and 1 over a, you will get 1. A cannot be 0. With an example with numbers is 4 times its reciprocal 1 over 4, which will give you 1. In example 1, we will find the multiplicative inverses of numbers. We're going to identify its multiplicative inverse and then justify the answer. So the inverse of 9, the multiplicative inverse of 9 is 1 over 9. The reason that will show is that 9 times 1 over 9 is equal to 1. For negative 5 over 6, it's going to be negative 6 over 5. The sign does not change. And then our reason is that negative 5 over 6 times negative 6 over 5 equals 1. In our first checkpoint, we are finding the multiplicative inverse. The multiplicative inverse of negative 2 over 3 is negative 3 over 2. We just switched the top and bottom of that fraction. When the number is not a fraction, such as 3 over 1 is the fraction for 3, so its multiplicative inverse is 1 over 3. Since this section focuses on division, we're going to be learning the division rule. We're going to be taking division problems and turning them into multiplication problems. So to divide a number a by a non-zero number b, you're going to multiply a, that first number, by the multiplicative inverse of b. So a divided by b is the same thing as a times 1 over b. And b cannot equal 0. So 7 divided by 3 is the same thing as 7 times 1 over 3. To understand the sign that a quotient should have, the rules are basically the same as multiplication. If you're dividing two real numbers with the same sign, your answer will be positive. And if you're dividing two real numbers with different signs, your answer will be negative. If you do 0 divided by any number, such as 0 divided by 2, 0 divided by 3, that will always give you a 0. However, you cannot ever divide a number by 0, because 0 doesn't have a multiplicative inverse. It will give you an error if you try to divide by 0. In example 2, we're going to take a division problem and we're going to change it into a multiplication problem and work it out as a multiplication problem. So 25 divided by 5. We probably all know that the answer to that is 5, but we're going to change it into a multiplication problem. The first number does not change. 25 is 25. The division, though, we're going to change to times, and the 5 we're going to change to 1 over 5. We will get 5. It's more helpful when you have a fraction in the problem, such as negative 40 divided by 2/3. That's going to be negative 40 times 3 over 2. And when you work that out, negative 40 times 3 is negative 120 divided by 2, which will give you a negative 60. In our next checkpoint questions, we have a fraction here, 1/2 divided by 3/4. To change that to a multiplication problem, it's going to become 1/2 times 4/3. And when we multiply fractions, we multiply across the top and across the bottom. 1 times 4 is 4, and 2 times 3 is 6, and that simplifies to 2/3. In number 4, 16 divided by negative 1/4 is going to become 16 times negative 4 over 1, or negative 4. 16 times 4 is 64, and the negative goes with it. To do a question like example 3, I'm going to show you two different methods of working this problem out. The first way is to take this division problem, 48y minus 32, divided by 8, and change it into a multiplication problem where we can then utilize the distributive property to help us simplify the problem. So we have 48y minus 32 divided by 8. So I'm going to write it first as a division problem that way. I'm going to change that into a multiplication problem. That's the same thing as multiplying by 1 over 8. Now we're going to do the distributive property to simplify. 48y times 1/8 minus 32 times 1/8. Well, 48 times 1/8 is 6. Y minus 32 times 1/8 is 4. Another way to look at this problem is to split it up the way it's already written. We're going to look at the 48y divided by 8 and the negative 32 divided by 8. 48 divided by 8 is 6y, and negative 32 divided by 8 is negative 4. And so you have two ways of showing this. One through the distributive property, or one just simply looking at this as two separate fractional parts of a problem. For checkpoint number 5, we're going to do it the way that we did in the extra part of the problem, the other way than what the notes show. We're going to take this as 3a over 2 and 4 over 2. 3 divided by 2 is just simply 3/2. It can simplify to a fraction if you choose, but it's the fraction 3/2, a. And then 4 divided by 2 is 2, so that's plus 2. Or in 6, 12 divided by 4 is 3, x, and negative 8 divided by 4 is minus 2. And so our answer is 3x minus 2. And that concludes section 2.6.